Hello and welcome. I'm Mike Roberts alongside Ted Gottlieb. I had this long introduction for you, Ted, that I wanted to give, but Ted's humility prevents it from being much longer than it is. But I want to get to this. First of all, Ted is the founder of the Senior Learning Institute. He's a senior real estate professional, a certified senior housing professional, a downsizing coach. He has a podcast that's syndicated, and he's the host, educator, and advocate of any number of different things, focusing a lot on seniors, but not exclusively. And he's a board member for a couple of organizations. Can I just start there?
Sure.
What are these organizations that you're a board member of?
Well, thank you. First of all, Mike, thank you very much for sitting down. I appreciate that. So I'm involved with a couple of different organizations. All are nonprofits, actually. So I'm involved with Aging Ahead, which was the former MEAAA, Meals on Wheels people, the area agency on aging. Organization's been around since '65. I've been on the board for going on close to 10 years on the foundation board. There's a couple different boards that they have there. So it's a volunteer position. And also, thanks to you, Mike, I'm a board member of Voice, and Voice is an advocacy organization that helps people that are in skilled nursing communities have a voice, make sure that they're being treated properly.
Because 55% of the people in these communities don't have anyone to visit with them, no family, no representative. And when I was on the board and they asked me to do a little recruiting, you were the first name that I thought of. But you wear a lot of hats, Ted, so I would advise maybe a haberdashery, or I would ask this question: is there more than one Ted helping you do all of this stuff? But it's just you.
No, just me. Thank you. Well, I have a little help, so I've got some team members that are working with me as well, so that helps drive the machine.
All right, let me just start with sort of the fundamental part of your real estate soul. You are a real estate professional specializing in working with seniors. So tell me a little bit about how you get there.
Well, I started in the real estate world as a licensed real estate agent in 2003. And I started out as an investor. I worked as a licensed real estate agent buying bank-owned property. And eventually I grew to a different position within that organization where we were involved with new construction. But in 2008, as many of us might have experienced, the market corrected and the new construction world suffered, and the business that I was working with closed up for a bit. So as I was trying to reinvent myself and go into the traditional world of real estate, working with buyers and sellers, I came across a gentleman at the gym of all places, and he was a throwback guy. He was the
old school.
Old school.
Yeah.
Fedora, cashmere jacket, silk underwear, that kind of guy. Very cool individual. It's
an interesting outfit for the gym.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of conversations going on there. But anyway, he was a great guy. So he and I became close. He became a surrogate grandparent to my kids, and I started over a period of time just having a normal relationship with him, and then ultimately what happened was he started to get older. So he went from his 3-story walk-up on Del Mar to a garden apartment, to an elevated building, to another elevated building. And eventually he needed help with shopping, and he needed help with doctor's appointments and visits to the hospital and all those things. And I was there for the entire ride.
You were almost like the adult child in the relationship.
I was the adult child, and unfortunately he had a surviving adult child and some grandkids, but unfortunately they were not as attentive as he probably would have liked to them have been. So things were falling through the cracks. So, I started to fulfill that role lovingly. And, I was there till his last breath, and it was an eye-opening experience. So while I was trying to reinvent myself, the light bulb went off. I'm helping this gentleman. I love working with seniors. Why don't I specialize in working with seniors? So that's really how it all started.
So the door opens for your passion here. We get an understanding of that, but it's more than just passion. So how does somebody who says that they specialize in senior real estate, how does that actually work?
Well, there's education that's involved, and there's certifications that are involved. And you start out with one that's sponsored by the National Association of Realtors. It's called an SRES, Seniors Real Estate Specialist. And you take a course online, you take a test, you pay a fee, and you're a Seniors Real Estate Specialist. So I did that, and I would go to senior networking events and organizations, and I'd stand up and say, hey, I'm Ted, I'm an SRES. And everybody was like, okay. What does that mean? and other people had done the same thing. So thinking that just having that designation was going to open up the door really didn't open up the door. So I sought additional education, and I went to an organization called the Seniors Real Estate Institute that offers a designation called a Certified Senior Housing Professional designation, and that really forces one to entrench themselves in the senior world. We needed to go and meet with elder law attorneys and financial advisors and go to all the different types of communities, meet with care managers, you name it, we had to meet with them. There was education, there was testing, there was a research paper, there was a plan. It was a pretty challenging certification that I earned.
You haven't used the word yet, but you have compassion, you have education. But this process for you is about patience. That's a rare commodity in this culture anyway, but especially in this portion of the economy.
Well, it's patience, but it comes naturally, and it shouldn't, because I'm born and bred on the East Coast. I'm a Philadelphian. I'm not supposed to know from compassion. I'm not supposed to know from patience, and I'm not supposed to know what a moral compass is. But I assume I have to thank Mom and Dad, but especially Mom, in regard to raising me right, and somehow it connected to the point where I didn't like how certain people were treating older adults in my world, and I realized that it was pervasive, and I wanted to make that my mission. So really it is a mission, it's a purpose. The real estate, what I do to eventually help them sell their homes, if there is one to sell, that helps fund it, but it's much more than that from my perspective.
We live in a culture that treats seniors like they're old iPhones, and you counter that with the way you work with them. I wanted to ask, though, in addition to selling a home, what other services do you provide to older adults and their families?
Well, I go in with two different hats on. Oftentimes I get a call from an elder law attorney, an attorney in general, a financial advisor, a care manager that says, Mr. or Mrs. Smith needs to sell their home or has passed away, then they need to sell the home, just go sell the home. So I will go ahead and do that. And I've got a variety of different approaches that I take to get that done to maximize how much we sell the house for, and we can talk about that. But then oftentimes I'm just told, let's just say I do some seminars, and I have an individual in the seminar will call me up and say, I need to do something. I don't know what to do, where to start. Can you come and help me through the process? Mm-hmm. So I take my real estate agent hat off, and I ask for permission to put my certified senior advisor hat on, which is another designation that I've earned, which allows me to ask the right questions. It allows me to dig a little deeper with permission to have conversations. And we talk about everything that goes along with the process of aging. I ask whether they have a financial advisor and an attorney. Can I get involved in that process, or they prefer that I not? If they have an attorney, if they want me involved, great. If they don't have an attorney, then I can refer them to them. And I act as a case manager of sorts that helps them through the process and helps them get through the planning portion, and the planning is so important. And a lot of times we don't realize how important the planning is until we've already gone through the process. The first person who goes to the attorney and goes to the financial advisor and goes through all the processes is the child of a parent who unfortunately didn't do that, and their legacy was, for lack of a better term, a mess, and things needed to be cleaned up.
I'm sure a lot of adult children find out the water gets very deep very fast. You are a CSA, a Certified Senior Advisor, and you talked a little bit about that, but I want to know specifically, what is that?
Well, a Certified Senior Advisor is a duly accredited designation that is earned through a rigorous program. I started the program with 7 different books that needed to be read, pretty thick, and it talks about every particular topic that is senior-centric. It's finances, it's accounting, it's elder law and estate planning. It's everything that touches an older adult, because most of the people that get this designation, that earn it, are not real estate agents. There are very few of us. There's actually 3 in the state of Missouri, 2 in the St. Louis area, and I earned this designation in 2017. It's such a rigorous process that one needs to be background checked before they can get the accreditation, which is very important. So every time you renew, every 3 years when you renew through continuing education, they do a national background check. In addition to that background check, I'm also background checked through the Missouri Seniors and Family Registry. So one of the things that I could suggest to you is when you're working with somebody who is trying to help, quote unquote, check their backgrounds, make sure that they do have background checks and that they're really reasonable individuals who you can trust.
Now you have all of this knowledge, all of this education. It's not just for you, it's so you can share it with families and with their seniors.
Oh, absolutely. That's really what it's all about. It's all about asking the questions, providing the information. Much of what I do is pro bono. A lot of what I do is analyzing the situation, taking it to a certain point where I know I'm over my head, and then referring it to the proper individuals and professionals.
I love that you're not afraid to get in over your head.
Well, yeah, I get that close, but then I know when to pull it back, and I make the recommendations and the referrals through people that I've vetted over the last 11 plus years that I know will get the job done. And I sit in the background and I make sure that things are being done and that everyone's happy, but I really need to leave it to the professionals, and then I just try to bring it all back together.
Now, I know you work with a lot of senior communities. I've seen you on the field and in action at those communities. Talk a little bit about that, Ted.
Well, the senior communities tend to be independent living communities, assisted living communities, memory care communities, and sometimes skilled. And what I do with a lot of the communities is they will often call me in when they have someone who's considering moving into that community, who doesn't know where to start and doesn't know what to do. Sometimes that person has already made the move and they just simply need to sell the house. And I say simply need to sell the house. But the communities will often bring me in, and I like to be considered to be a part of their team. I help them to convert the individual from prospect into resident, which is really, really important. But I also do it with the mindset of we want to make sure this is the right thing for the individual. So sometimes I get in a really tough situation because I have to ask the questions that some communities have not asked. Now, there are many communities who ask the right questions and they talk about finances. There are other communities that may not touch on that, which is really, really important because I've seen situations where people haven't really had the money to stay in that community for a long period of time. So the really reputable senior living communities are asking the questions to make sure that affordability is there. If not, sometimes that comes up and I feel obligated to have that conversation with the individual.
So you are making sure that there's not a fail moment on either side, the family side, the senior side, or even the community side.
Right. Well, nobody wants the failed moment. And there are some communities who are really concerned about the potential resident being successful. One in particular, we had a conversation with, and she said, based upon where he is at this point, I don't know that he could be successful in independent living. That's where he wants to go. It's a little less expensive. We're going to try it there, but we're going to keep an eye on him. And if it's not the right move, then we have to go to assisted. Okay, so that's really, really important. The communities are often concerned with, their census, making sure that they have folks that are coming in, but also they need to be concerned about, and most of them are, about retention, because it's great to get somebody to move in, but you want to retain them. So many of the things that I do to help with that is ask the right questions, but I also help them with the sale of the property because the property can be sold in a variety of different ways. My goal is to maximize how much that property is sold for because that helps with retention and that helps the older adult be able to afford to live there longer. And even if they have a ton of money, that money is still important.
Well, you can know how much money you have. What you don't know is how long you're going to need it.
Right.
Let me take you back to 2019. You start the Senior Learning Institute. For those who don't know, what is it? And then why did you form it in the first place?
The Senior Learning Institute formed out of seminars that I started to do for 2 municipalities in the St. Louis metropolitan area. And we started providing live seminars at the municipal location, City Hall, Rec Center, something along those lines. So Chesterfield is one, Sunset Hills is the other. And what's wonderful is the partnership that we have is that the municipalities are supporting it. They're putting it in their parks and rec guides. They're putting it on their websites. They're sending out emails. They're inviting people because they're concerned about their residents. They want to retain
them. And they do that because you help them.
Well, we helped them, and one of the things we needed to make sure that we assured them was that it wasn't going to be a sales pitch, because that's very easy to fall into. So it's not a sales pitch. The only time that any of the panelists who are on there, and these panelists are vetted, will say who they are, where they're from, and that's about it. The rest of it is real information. So one has the ability of going to the live events at the municipal location, and we do 8 of them a year. But then I needed to find a better way to communicate, because we looked at this during the pandemic, and we found that a lot of people weren't coming anymore. So I put it under the umbrella of the Senior Learning Institute. And the whole idea of the Senior Learning Institute, it kind of acts like a nonprofit, but it's not. But there's 24/7 access at the seniorlearninginstitute.com. There's a shameless plug. But
I've gone on there, Ted, and there's just a wealth of information.
It's all designed to provide information to older adults and their families who need resources, who want to get a feel for things. I'm always available to have a conversation and to personally refer, but that's a good first place to start. We also then, in order to spread the word, we developed what we call educational partners, sponsors of sorts, some big companies in town and some small companies in town that have supported the effort to get the word out. And it also is a way for them to market their businesses as well, because there's links on the website. So it works really, really well. We're looking to add maybe one other municipality, and we're constantly reinventing the content of these seminars so that they don't get stale. But we want to make sure that people have access both live as well as online.
All right, I want you to put your real estate hat back on, and I want to ask about investors. I mean, I know real estate investors have been going into the real estate market, especially targeting seniors, for a long time. But am I crazy, or is it happening more than it ever has? And what does that mean?
Well, it seems like it's happening more than it ever has, especially with social media. We're seeing a lot of it. I mean, keep in mind, in 2003, I was an investor. I used to buy bank-owned property. So I understand the mentality of it. And that experience that I have really helps me with my traditional real estate business today. It also helps me work with established investors today in that rare situation when a property needs to be sold that way. But I think it's a very, very rare situation. And we can dig a little bit deeper. But older adults tend to be focused on by a lot of folks who may not be as ethical as we might want them to be.
Well, let's face it, that phone rings all the time.
It's ringing all the time. There's no question about it. And the idea of selling a home and not doing anything to it and getting cash and leaving everything there is very, very appealing. The downside to doing that is that a lot of the time it's not necessary. We can accomplish the same thing in a similar period of time and get I think, a much stronger offer. So what I often will do is, if someone says to me, I want to sell my home as is, I say, well, can I come see it and kind of get a feel for it? And we'll go look at the house. If the house is really beat up and really deserves to be sold as is, and I think that's less than 10% of the properties that are out there, it's got structural issues, it's got this, it's got that, then what I do is I bring in 3 or 4 licensed real estate agents who buy as investors. And I like licensed real estate agents who are investors, because at least there's that
connection.
There's a connection, but there's that certain bar of entry, right? You know that they've passed a test, you know that they've been checked by the state, and you know that there's some accountability there to the board of realtors or whoever it might be. So I think that's really, really important. So I think being licensed is really important. Otherwise, if you're going to do a deal with someone who's not licensed, where are they even coming up with the contract? And is the contract even a contract that is somewhat not biased? So that is really, really important to me. So I'll bring in 3 or 4 licensed investors, and they always say the same thing to me. How much do they want for the house? And I always say, it's not how much they want for the house, it's how much you're willing to pay for the house. So I have what's called a cattle call. I bring in 3 or 4 investors, and I say to them, between 11 and 12 on whatever date it's going to be, we're having a cattle call at this particular property. Why don't you come take a look at it and see what you're willing to pay for it, if you're interested in how much you want to pay for it. And they all come back to me, and they kind of creates a sense of competition. And I typically will get more for the property, even though I'm earning a small commission on that, than they would have in the other way. And I'm talking 25% more, sometimes even more than that. Now, there are rare exceptions that I'm not able to accomplish that. So what I will often say is, if you already have an investor's offer, great, keep that in your back pocket. Let me come in. Let me bring in my people, see how much they're willing to pay, and if they're willing to pay more after my commission, you're netting more, then great. If not, I'll be happy to stick around, and I'll be happy to help facilitate things on your behalf at no cost.
All right, Ted, tell me now. I come to you and I say, Ted, help me know what to do when I choose a real estate agent. What would you say?
Well, a lot of it comes down to you want to make sure that they're licensed, and let's just say that they are. A lot of people have, it's like an insurance agent. Everybody knows somebody who's a real estate agent, who's an insurance agent, who's a loan officer. It's who's the right person for the job. I would look for referrals. I would look at their years of experience. I would look at the amount of sales that they've made over the years. So a lot of times I will, I'm approaching $87 million worth of sales in my career.
That's a good career.
That's a good career. It's a lot to some, and to some other power players in the real estate world, that's just like 1 year's worth of business, right? So, but overall, the average real estate agent sells 2 homes a year. Last year, my team sold about 23, but if you look at last year as a whole, from today's date, 1 year back, I've got 55 properties that I've had under contract. So there's no substitute for experience. So experience is really, really important. Get recommendations, look at experience, look for someone who knows the area.
I was going to ask you, what about location? Is it important that they know the area really well?
Yes and no.
I assume it would be?
Yes and no. If I know the area really well, I'm going to brag about the fact that I know the area very well. Maybe I even live in that area. But if I don't know the area very, very well, I still feel very confident that I can help price that property correctly, because it's really a math problem. What we're doing is we're looking at your home, we're comparing your home to other homes that are within a quarter-mile to half-mile radius. So as long as I have access to what's on the market and what has sold within the last 90 days or year period of time, I think I'm good enough at this point to look at the numbers, do the math, make some adjustments up or down based upon the condition of the home, and nail it in regard to what the sales price should be. Now, do we ultimately sell it for that price? We can sell it for more, we can sell it for a little bit less, but we know within minutes of going online, because everybody goes to the MLS and it populates every website known to mankind gets to see this listing, and every agent gets to see these listings, no matter who the broker is, no matter what the name of the brokerage is that I work for. Everybody is on a level playing field because of the syndication of all the listings. So we all get to see it, the public as well as the agents.
You brought it up, but I want to ask you, where do you live? Ted, where do you hang your hat?
We hang our hat. I've been in St. Louis for 30 years. I relocated here. I had a small stay in Maryland Heights for about 3 or 4 years, and then we moved to Chesterfield. So the majority of my living experience has been in the wonderful city of Chesterfield. So we know the surrounding areas very well. Our kids went to Parkway Central, and so that's our hood, and we love Chesterfield.
What about subdivisions? Is it common? Is it important for a real estate agent to dominate? That's my word, but is it important for them to dominate a subdivision? Is there any gain there?
Well, there's a lot of what they call farming in certain neighborhoods, and it's often common that real estate agents who live in that neighborhood will farm that neighborhood, or the word spreads that that's the agent, and oftentimes that agent will get a larger number of listings. So in Chesterfield, I've sold 50 plus homes in Chesterfield, about $18 million of homes in Chesterfield over the years. And in Westbury Manor, which is where we live, I've sold 8 homes, or maybe involved with 9. I'm not quite sure the number, but it's somewhere in that range. Now, there's 305 homes in Westbury Manor. And there's homes that go on the market in Westbury all the time. And for me, I'd like to see my name on more of them. And it's funny, I had a conversation with somebody, and Westbury's a very unique subdivision in that we have a lot of community events. And we had a July 4th event just recently, and one of the neighbors came up to me and said, well, that home sold and this home sold. And she goes, something to the extent of, I'm surprised more people don't use you to sell homes here. And I said, well, I'm scratching my head as well, because and she said the same thing. She said, who's got more of an interest and selling a home in Westbury Manor and selling it for more than you do. I said, exactly. So I think everybody should be using me in Westbury because I have a vested interest. I know the market really, really well. It makes sense for me to try to sell the home for as much as I possibly can because that positively impacts my home. So when I see a home in Westbury that's sold by somebody who doesn't know the neighborhood, who sells it for below market value, that hurts me, that hurts you.
I mean, you literally have a vested interest yourself.
I had one neighbor whose house I could walk to. It was less than 200 yards away, and he said the same thing to me. He goes, you can see my house, you can walk to my house, you have a vested interest in selling my house. He goes, I wouldn't think of anybody else. So I'd say, hey, Westbury Manor, I'm your guy for a variety of reasons, not only because I have a vested interest in it, but because I've been in the business for a while and I know what I'm doing.
All right, I have two more questions for you. First of all, and they're really sort of hypothetical situations. It's great if we can think in advance, both the kids and the seniors themselves, about planning. What would you say to that family that's just now sort of thinking things through, where everybody's in a good place, but we want to think about the future? What would you say to them?
I'd say planning is really important. The family dynamic it's so hard to predict. I find there are situations, and I'm thinking of one particular right now, where there were 3 girls involved and there was mom there, and the girls were involved on Zoom calls and very involved in the process and very caring and taking care of mom and dad, and mom and dad were communicative, and that was great. And there are other situations where the relationship is not that dynamic, and a mom or dad wants to stay, keep the kids out of it. They don't want to disturb their worlds. They don't have the best relationship. Sometimes they don't trust the relationship. So really every situation is a whole lot different. But I would say my focus is always with the older adult. And when the older adult, and we talk about what the relationship is and how much they want me to communicate with the children and how open that relationship is, then I in turn will know how to deal with things. But I always ask for permission. Ideally, we're all on the same page, and then we're all planning ahead of time. So there are a lot of times where I'm coming in and people are saying, well, I'm not ready to leave yet, right? So and I'm an aging in place specialist. So because what I found is that a lot of times people aren't ready to move. And 90% of the time, people say, I want to go out feet first. I'm not going anywhere. So I found that. So there's nothing in it for me in regard to selling the house. But what I can do is I can put my aging in place hat on, and I can say, okay, well, if we're going to stay here, there's certain things that I recommend that you do. And there could be remodifications of the home to do that. There could be accommodations with grab bars and flooring and lighting and wearing the medical alert system around their neck, all sorts of things that we can do to help you stay put. Nothing in it for me other than the satisfaction of knowing that you're going to be taken care of. If it then gets to the point where we can't live there comfortably by ourselves, then we talk about bringing somebody in. So we talk about in-home care, private duty. And then if it gets to the point where that's no longer affordable or the way that you want to go, then we talk about independent living communities and how you can transition there. And we have folks that can help you find the right place.
Well, and I want to go back to the planning part of it, because we all have, every single one of us in this studio and out there in the world has this in common. We all have end-of-life moments that are coming, and the more you can put that on the table and look at it and ahead of time, the better off you're going to be. But what about the house on fire moment where, oh my gosh, this happened and now we have to move quickly? How do you deal with those moments, Ted, and remove anxiety to the extent you can and fear to the extent you can? I mean, how do you handle those?
Well, I've literally had a house on fire situation, actually. Okay, so someone that I met at my seminars called me up at dinner, and I picked up the phone, and he goes, I think I burnt my house down.
Oh.
He thought he did it. Lo and behold, he did not. But he had a house that burnt down, and he and his wife, older adults, I said, well, let me finish up, and I'll come meet you. Where are you? He's at a hotel. I followed the smoke scent to their room, right? And we had a conversation, and it was okay. They were thinking about senior living, but they didn't have a plan. And this couple had some money. Didn't have a financial advisor, didn't have an elder law attorney. I got together, we put all that together, and then I looked for ways to get the home sold. Now, the home was torched. So I eventually found an builder, actually, who bought the land and built on it. We actually put more money. They actually ended up getting more money, and I also worked with the insurance company. They actually walked away with more money because they had the fire than if they didn't, because of the insurance claim and the money that we were able to get for the house. But there are situations where the house has to sell quickly. we still have to go back to the basics. How important is the money? What's our time frame? Again, I can bring investors in and within 2 days get an offer, a cash offer, a non-contingent offer, as is, leave your stuff, do whatever, and get it closed within 10 days. That, while having your back covered. So those situations definitely exist, and I can help with that. But there are often times when it does make sense to just slow down a little bit. So if you've already settled down and you've made your move, and you don't need the money right away, let's take a little bit of time. If the money's important, let's figure out a way to put more money in your pocket. Whether you need it for your care, you want it for your legacy, if you're going to donate it, whatever it is. Oftentimes, what I hate to see is when somebody goes in, buys the house, in turn flips it and sells it to somebody else without doing anything to it, and there's $5, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 left on the table that could have gone to that family or a cause that family cared for. That's the pain that I'm trying to prevent.
Mm-hmm. All right, drive me to the correct place. If I'm interested in your services for real estate, where do I go?
So real estate is trustandted.com. That's the best website to go to. It will provide you a variety of different links, but trustandted.com.
And I want content, I want context, I want to learn for my mother or father, or I am the senior. What about there?
So Senior Learning Institute is the best website to go to. If that's too long, which I understand, stlsli.com, St. Louis Senior Learning Institute, but it's seniorlearninginstitute.com. Then you can always call me. I've got 2 phone numbers, my mobile and most direct number for phone calls and texts, 314-956-9477. I have an office number, which is 314-690-9922.
Ted Gottlieb, you're just a good dude, and thank you so much for your time. For more information, go to these websites and try and slow down. If at all possible, plan in advance. And either way, have a great day.